The sky above Zephyra shimmered in a soft violet glow, the twin suns casting long silver shadows over the sprawling palace. Captain Ethan Rinn adjusted the strap of his security harness and surveyed the scene. The Interstellar Summit was supposed to be a routine event, a gathering of alien dignitaries and human representatives. But routine, he knew, rarely stayed that way. Ethan had been chosen for this mission for one reason. He was human, and humans were unpredictable in ways aliens often underestimated. He was agile, clever, and capable of improvising in moments of extreme danger. Those traits had served him well in Earth's security divisions, and now they were about to be tested in the heart of an alien kingdom. Inside the palace, Princess Liara moved gracefully along the polished walkways. She was young, but there was a calm intelligence in her eyes that belied her age. The palace staff, a mix of alien attendants and human aides, watched her carefully. Ethan stayed close, blending in as best he could with the ceremonial uniforms. "Captain Rinn," Liara said softly, her voice carrying a tone of quiet authority. "Thank you for being here. I've heard humans are different from what the court expects." Ethan gave a small smile. "Different can be good sometimes. It keeps people guessing." He kept his tone light, though he remained alert. Every corner, every shadow could hide danger. The summit began as planned, with alien dignitaries presenting their statements of peace and cooperation. Ethan's eyes scanned the room constantly. Something about the atmosphere felt off. The normally precise symmetry of Zephyra's palace seemed slightly disturbed, as if a hidden presence had shifted the energy in the hall. Then it happened. A subtle hum, almost imperceptible at first, grew louder. Lights flickered across the room. The guests murmured in confusion, turning toward the source. And then, from the far end of the hall, a group of masked figures emerged, fast, silent, and deadly. They were not part of any delegation Ethan recognized. "Princess," Ethan shouted. Without a moment's hesitation, he moved between the approaching figures and Liara, his hand reaching for the compact energy shield he carried. The attackers lunged, sleek weapons gleaming under the violet light. They were trained, precise, and relentless, but Ethan moved with a speed that surprised even him. He deflected their strikes, using his shield not just to protect himself but to create a moving barrier around the princess. Liara's eyes widened, but she did not panic. Instead, she mirrored Ethan's movements, stepping back as he guided her toward the palace's inner corridor. The attackers were close now, their advanced technology making them dangerous, but Ethan's human intuition allowed him to anticipate their moves. A loud crash echoed as one of the intruders tried to force a door open. Ethan grabbed a nearby ornamental pillar and swung it to knock the figure aside. Then he threw his shield forward in a precise arc, disabling 2 more attackers. The palace guards were slow to react, frozen by the sudden violence, but Ethan's actions bought precious seconds. "Follow me," he urged. Liara nodded, trusting him completely. Humans and aliens often had different ways of thinking, but trust was universal. They turned into a side hallway, dimly lit and narrow. Ethan pushed a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden passage he had noticed during earlier security sweeps. The attackers had assumed the princess would be trapped in the main hall. They were wrong. The corridor led them to a small observation deck overlooking the palace gardens. Ethan crouched behind a railing, keeping Liara close. From here, they could see the main hall in chaos. Alien guards had finally rallied, but the attackers were skilled and several dignitaries were trapped under fallen debris. Ethan's mind raced. The palace had multiple exits, but none of them were secure, and calling for reinforcements might take too long. He needed a plan, and fast. "Princess, stay low and stay quiet," he whispered. "We're going to make it out, but we have to move carefully." Liara nodded, her face set with determination. "I trust you, Captain." That small declaration gave Ethan a spark of hope. Humans often had to rely on quick thinking in impossible situations, and that ability, the ability to see options where others saw only walls, was his advantage. The attack lasted only minutes, though it felt much longer. By the time the palace security team had regained control, the masked intruders had vanished, leaving destruction in their wake. But one thing was certain: Ethan had saved the princess. In the aftermath, Queen Seraphine arrived, her presence commanding the room. She was regal, tall, and her eyes seemed to peer straight into Ethan's soul. She studied him carefully, noticing the sweat on his brow, the shield clutched tightly in his hands, and the way he had protected her daughter without hesitation. "Captain Rin," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you have performed a deed that few could manage. You protected the princess when others faltered." Ethan bowed slightly. "It was my duty, Your Majesty." The Queen's expression softened slightly, but there was a weight in her gaze. "Your duty is commendable, yet I cannot allow you to leave Zephyra at this time. The princess's safety is not yet guaranteed, and your presence is now indispensable." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had expected gratitude, perhaps even honor, but not confinement. He was a protector, not a prisoner. Yet he saw the logic in her words. The palace had enemies, some subtle, some obvious, and humans, with their unpredictability and courage, were rare assets. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said carefully, concealing the conflict within. Princess Liara stepped forward. "Captain, I appreciate what you've done. I know it was dangerous, and yet you never hesitated." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. "Someone has to keep you safe, and sometimes that someone is human." The Queen watched the exchange silently, a mix of respect and caution in her eyes. She turned and addressed her advisors, her voice firm. "Ensure that Captain Rin is provided with everything he needs. His skills are now part of our defense. We cannot risk losing him." Ethan knew the situation had changed forever. What had begun as a simple security assignment had become a matter of life, duty, and honor on a scale he had never imagined. He would remain on Zephyra for now, but one thought lingered in his mind. Humans could survive, adapt, and prevail where others might fail. And in the heart of an alien kingdom, that might be exactly what was needed. As night fell over Zephyra, the twin suns dipping below the horizon, Ethan stood on the palace balcony, with Princess Liara by his side. The stars stretched endlessly above them, distant and mysterious. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, yet there was also a spark of something else. Possibility. The galaxy was vast, and threats were endless. But if humanity had taught him anything, it was this: courage, intelligence, and heart could turn even the most impossible situation into a chance to shine. And for now, that was exactly what he would do: protect the princess, navigate the court's intrigue, and prove that humans were worth every bit of trust the Queen had placed in him. Little did he know, the challenges of Zephyra were only beginning. The shadows lurking in the palace corridors were deeper than anyone realized, and the true test of human courage was yet to come. The palace of Zephyra had settled into an uneasy calm. The twin suns had vanished below the horizon, leaving the city bathed in the soft violet glow of the evening. Captain Ethan Rin stood near the royal gardens, scanning the area. Even after the attack, he could not relax. Danger had a way of returning when people least expected it. Princess Liara approached him, her steps quiet but purposeful. She had changed since the attack. There was a new sharpness in her gaze, a hint of determination Ethan admired. Humans had an instinct for noticing subtle changes, and he could tell that something was stirring within the princess. "Captain," she said softly, "do you think the attackers will return?" Ethan shook his head. "I can't say for sure. But Zephyra is important, strategically and politically. Anyone who wants to disrupt interstellar peace would see the princess as a key target. That makes her and anyone protecting her a potential threat to their plans." Liara frowned. "So you're saying we are not safe?" "Not completely," Ethan replied. "But humans have something special: adaptability. We see patterns, we think ahead, and we act even when the rules are uncertain. That's why you're still safe right now." Before the princess could respond, a soft chime echoed through the hallway. It was Queen Seraphine's personal summons. Ethan straightened, and Liara gave him a look of silent understanding. They walked together toward the grand hall where the Queen awaited. Queen Seraphine sat in her usual seat of authority, the soft glow of ambient lighting highlighting the sharp angles of her face. Her eyes were fixed on Ethan as he entered. "Captain Rin," she began, her voice steady, "your actions today were commendable. You displayed courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness. These are qualities rarely seen in anyone, human or alien." Ethan inclined his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what was necessary to protect the princess." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Necessary, yes, but extraordinary. That is why I have decided you cannot leave Zephyra at this time. Ethan felt a twinge of frustration. "Your Majesty, I am honored truly, but I am not a prisoner. My duty is to protect, yes, but I also have obligations beyond Zephyra." The Queen's expression did not change. "And yet your presence here is crucial. The palace has enemies, some seen and some hidden. Your actions today have shown me The palace of Zephyra was quiet, but Ethan Ryn had learned that silence was not always peace. In silence, whispers lived. In shadows, secrets waited, and Ethan was determined to uncover them. It had been several days since the attack on the summit. Life inside the palace seemed to return to normal, at least on the surface. The servants moved with their usual grace, guards walked their patrol routes, and dignitaries from other systems still visited the royal court. But Ethan's instincts told him something was wrong. Humans were trained to notice patterns, and he had begun to see cracks in the palace routine. One morning, Ethan stood with Princess Liara in the training courtyard. He was teaching her how to observe her surroundings, not with weapons, but with her eyes and mind. "Look there," Ethan said, pointing toward the servants' entrance. "The guard checks the door every hour, yes? But yesterday I saw him step away for 20 minutes. And during that time, no one replaced him." Liara tilted her head thoughtfully. "That doesn't sound like much." "Maybe not," Ethan replied, "but small gaps create big risks. Humans survive by noticing the small things others ignore. Danger often hides in details." Liara nodded, her eyes following the guard. "So the palace is not as secure as it looks." "Exactly," Ethan said. "That's why we can't just rely on routine. We have to think like the enemy. If you wanted to get inside, where would you go? How would you move without being noticed?" Liara smiled faintly. "You sound like you've done this before." Ethan chuckled. "Not as the enemy, but as someone who has to anticipate them. On Earth, security officers are taught to think like both sides. That way, they can predict what's coming before it happens." Before Liara could reply, a palace aide approached with a sealed message. The aide bowed and handed it directly to Ethan, not the princess. Ethan frowned. It was unusual for him to receive messages this way. Breaking the seal, he read the short, encrypted note. "Watch the council chamber. A hand you trust may not be loyal." Ethan folded the note and slipped it into his uniform. He kept his face calm for Liara's sake, but inside his mind raced. Who had sent this? And what did they mean? That evening, Ethan walked the halls alone. He had memorized the palace layout, from the grand reception halls to the hidden corridors behind the walls. Humans had a talent for mapping spaces in their minds, a skill he relied on often. The council chamber was empty when he arrived. Its high ceilings and ornate windows cast long shadows across the polished floor. Ethan crouched near a decorative pillar, scanning the room. He noticed faint marks on the wall near the chamber's side door, scratches, as if it had been opened in secret more often than usual. He checked the floor and found something else, a fragment of metal, thin and curved. It didn't belong to Zephyran architecture. It looked like a piece of advanced tech, perhaps from a communicator or stealth device. Ethan pocketed it. As he left, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned quickly, hand near his shield, only to see Princess Liara standing in the doorway. "Captain," she whispered, "I followed you. You've been restless all day," Ethan sighed. "You shouldn't sneak up on me like that." "It's dangerous," Liara's eyes narrowed. "And you shouldn't hide things from me. If there's danger in this palace, I have a right to know." Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. There are secrets here, and I think someone inside the palace is working against your family. We need to be careful." Liara stepped closer. "Then let me help. If people don't trust you because you're human, they might speak more freely around me." Ethan considered her words. She was right. He had already noticed suspicious glances from certain staff members who disliked the Queen's decision to keep a human protector. Liara could move among them more naturally. "All right," he said finally, "but you follow my rules. You observe, you listen, and you tell me everything. No risks." Liara smiled faintly. "Agreed." The next day, Ethan began watching the council more closely. He sat near the back during meetings, his eyes scanning the faces of the alien advisors. He noticed subtle gestures, 2 advisors who always exchanged glances, a minister who hesitated before speaking, and 1 guard who seemed more interested in listening than protecting. That night, Ethan compared his notes with Liara's observations. She had spoken with servants and attendants, asking innocent questions. What she reported confirmed Ethan's suspicions. Certain members of the palace were secretly meeting after hours. They say it's for trade discussions, Liara whispered. But why would trade talks need to happen in secret without guards or records? Because it's not trade, Ethan replied grimly. It's conspiracy. He pulled the fragment of metal from his pocket and showed it to Liara. I found this near the council chamber. It doesn't belong to your people. It looks like part of a stealth communicator. Whoever is plotting isn't just local. They have outside help. Liara's eyes widened. Then the attack wasn't random. No, Ethan said. It was part of something bigger. Days turned into nights and Ethan's investigation deepened. He learned to move through the palace like a shadow, slipping into corridors no one else used. His human training helped him blend into crowds or disappear when needed. He intercepted quiet conversations, decoded fragments of messages, and pieced together a puzzle that grew more troubling by the hour. The picture became clear. A faction within the palace wanted power. They believed the queen's focus on peace made Zephyra weak. They wanted to seize control, even if it meant placing the princess in danger. One evening, Ethan confronted a palace guard who had been acting suspiciously. He found him in a dim corridor, speaking into a hidden device. When the guard saw Ethan, his eyes widened with fear. He dropped the device and ran, but Ethan was faster. Pinning the guard against the wall, Ethan demanded, "Who are you working for?" The guard stammered but refused to answer. His silence spoke louder than words. Ethan confiscated the device and released him, knowing the queen's advisors would need proof before taking action. Later, as Ethan examined the device, he realized it was transmitting to a hidden network outside the palace walls. The attack on the summit had been just the beginning. That night, Ethan stood on the balcony with Princess Liara. The city lights shimmered below them, but his mind was far from calm. "There's a storm coming," he said quietly. "These conspirators aren't finished. They're planning something bigger." Liara's expression was serious. "And you'll stop them." Ethan glanced at her. "Not alone. Humans are good at surviving, at adapting, but even I can't fight shadows by myself. I'll need you, and I'll need the Queen's trust." Liara placed a hand on the railing. "Then we'll face it together. You've already taught me to see the world differently, Captain. I won't be a bystander." Ethan looked out at the horizon. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, enemies plotted their next move, but he felt a spark of confidence. Humans had a way of turning impossible situations into victories, and now with the princess by his side, he believed they could outthink even the darkest conspiracies. The shadows in the palace were deep, but Ethan knew one truth. Light always revealed what darkness tried to hide, and humans, more than anyone, carried that light. The mornings on Zephyra were calm but full of strange light. The twin suns rose slowly over the palace, washing the walls with gold and violet. Captain Ethan Rinn stood in the training courtyard waiting for Princess Liara. He had laid out a few practice tools on a long stone bench: light shields, small sensor cubes, and a holographic map of the palace corridors. Liara arrived wearing a simple training outfit. Her usual royal posture was still there, but her eyes showed something new: curiosity mixed with resolve. Since the conspiracies had been uncovered, she had asked Ethan to teach her how to defend herself. "I'm ready," she said. Ethan gave a small smile. "It's not about fighting, Princess. It's about awareness. A human can survive a dangerous situation not just by strength, but by thinking differently. That's what I'm going to teach you." They started with simple exercises. Ethan placed the sensor cubes in different positions around the courtyard. They emitted faint pulses of light. "Close your eyes," Ethan instructed. "Walk forward and tell me when you pass each cube. Don't listen with your ears only. Feel the pattern." "The light has a rhythm." Liara hesitated but obeyed. As she walked slowly, her hands stretched out slightly, she began to notice the faint pulse patterns. She called out softly each time she passed a cube. Ethan nodded. "Good. This is about mapping your surroundings without depending only on sight. It's a human survival skill, using every sense, even the ones you don't realize you have." When she opened her eyes, Liara laughed softly. "That was harder than I thought." "Everything useful is," Ethan said. He moved on to shield training. "Hold it like this." He showed her how to activate the small energy shield on her wrist. It shimmered into a half-transparent field. "Now angle it toward me." He picked up a soft training baton and tapped the shield lightly. "Good, tilt it, don't block with brute force, redirect." He swung again. This time the baton slid off the shield harmlessly. Liara's eyes widened. It's like guiding water. Exactly, Ethan said. Humans learned long ago to use leverage instead of power. That's what keeps us alive when we're outmatched. They practiced for over an hour. Liara improved quickly, her movements becoming fluid. Ethan could see her natural discipline blending with the adaptive style he taught her. During a break, they sat on the CE. The twin sons of Zephyra had barely risen when the palace alarm screamed through every hall. The sound was sharp and alien, echoing off marble and steel. Guards ran to their posts. Servants sealed doors and windows. Captain Ethan Wren was already awake. He had been reviewing the security feeds when the warning lights flashed red. The rogue AI drones had activated themselves. He grabbed his shield unit and comlink and ran toward the royal quarters. Princess Liara was waiting, already dressed in her training gear. She had her wrist shield activated and her breathing was steady. "They're coming?" she asked. "They're here," Ethan answered. "Stay close. Remember everything I taught you." Together they moved through the corridor toward the command chamber. Guards saluted Ethan without hesitation. By now everyone knew he was coordinating the defense. The Queen had given him full authority to act. The attack begins below the palace. Hidden doors burst open as dozens of black drones crawled out like insects. Their surfaces shimmered with shifting code. They rose on thin, silent propellers and zipped through maintenance shafts, heading for the heart of the palace. Ethan reached the main security console. "Shut down all internal lifts," he ordered the guards. "Lock the inner gates and flood the maintenance tunnels with interference signals." The guards worked quickly. Blue barriers blinked on the palace map as doors sealed and energy fields activated. But it was not enough. The drones were already inside. One of the palace walls exploded inward with a flash of light. 3 drones flew in, firing thin beams that cut through furniture and walls. Guards raised their energy rifles, but the drones were fast. Ethan stepped forward, shield up. The beams hit his shield and bent away, striking harmlessly into the ceiling. "Angle, don't block," he shouted to the guards. "Spread out and flank them." The guards obeyed. Liara crouched beside Ethan, her own shield raised. She remembered the training: redirect, don't resist. When a drone fired at her, she tilted her shield and the beam deflected into a marble pillar. Ethan hurled a small EMP charge. It exploded with a pulse of blue light and 2 drones dropped to the floor, their wings twitching. The 3rd drone tried to retreat but was cut down by combined guard fire. That was only the first wave, Ethan warned. They'll adapt. The Queen's decision. In the throne chamber, Queen Seraphine watched the battle on a holographic display. Her advisors spoke at once, voices overlapping in panic. "Evacuate the palace," one cried. "No, hold the inner sanctum." Another shouted. The Queen silenced them with a gesture. "We will stand and fight. Captain Wren has prepared for this moment. We follow his plan." Her voice carried across the room with calm authority. Even in danger, she radiated strength. But deep inside, she feared for her daughter. She activated her comlink. "Captain Wren, this is the Queen." "I hear you," Ethan replied. "You have command of the palace defense," she said. "Protect my daughter and our people." "I will," Ethan promised. Holding the corridors. The palace corridors became a maze of flickering lights and echoing blasts. Ethan led a team of guards and engineers moving from one choke point to another, sealing off sections as the drones advanced. Liara stayed at his side, giving crisp orders to nearby guards. 2 on the left flank. Watch the ceiling vents. Keep your shields angled. Her voice carried no hesitation now. She was acting like a leader. At one corridor junction, a swarm of 6 drones swooped down. Their wings emitted a high-pitched whine. Ethan grabbed Liara and dove behind a column as beams scorched the floor. He peeked out, scanning the drones. They had changed their firing pattern. "They're learning," he muttered. "We need to surprise them." He pulled a portable projector from his belt and tossed it into the hallway. A holographic image of Ethan appeared farther down the corridor, running toward the opposite side. The drone spun and fired at the decoy. In that moment, the guards rushed out, unleashing a barrage of EMP pulses. All 6 drones fell, sparking and twitching. Liara exhaled. "That was clever." "Humans survive by being unpredictable," Ethan said with a quick smile. "Machines hate that." The inner chamber's hours passed like minutes. The drones continued to press forward, but Ethan's tactics slowed them. The palace's high ceilings and layered halls became traps, Shields deflected beams, EMP charges pulsed blue, and guard squads moved in coordinated waves. Still, the enemy adapted. Newer drones began deploying small crawling devices, mini-mines that attached to walls and exploded after a delay. Ethan had the engineers create signal jammers and scatter them throughout the palace to disrupt the mines. Inside the command room, the Queen stood over the holomap, watching red dots blink closer to the royal quarters. "They're pushing toward the throne room," she said softly. Liara's comlink buzzed. "Princess, fall back to the inner vault," a guard advised. "No," she said firmly. "I stay with Captain Rin." Ethan gave her a quick look but didn't argue. He knew her presence inspired the guards. A turning point by midday, the palace trembled with distant impacts. Smoke drifted through the upper corridors. Ethan and Liara reached the last defensive line before the throne room. The guards here looked exhausted but determined. Ethan placed a hand on the shoulder of a young guard. "You've done well. Hold your position. We'll make our stand here." He turned to Liara. "Remember what we practiced with command signals?" She nodded. "Short, clear orders." Confidence in the voice. "Exactly. I'll handle the tactics. You handle the morale." The next wave of drones arrived, larger ones with heavier armor. They fired pulses that shook the marble pillars. Guards braced themselves, shields up. Ethan shouted, "Split formation. 2 groups, crossfire angles." Liara added, "Stay low. Aim for their sensors." Her voice was steady, sharp, and the guards moved with renewed energy. Ethan leaped forward, using his shield to deflect a drone's beam, then slashed at its wing joint with a vibro knife. Sparks burst and the drone spun out of control. Another drone lunged toward Liara, but she tilted her shield, redirecting its attack into the floor, and a guard blasted it with an EMP pulse. The battle became a blur of motion, light, and sound. Ethan moved like a shadow between pillars, drawing fire, tricking drones, striking weak spots. Liara's commands kept the guards coordinated, turning chaos into organized defense. Finally, the last drone of the wave fell with a crash, its propeller spinning to a stop. The corridor fell silent except for the heavy breathing of the defenders. A hidden hand, as they regrouped, Ethan's scanner beeped. He pulled it out and frowned. "There's a control signal coming from inside the palace. Someone is directing these drones in real time." Liara's eyes widened. "A traitor? More than one, maybe," Ethan said. "But if we can cut the signal, we stop the attack." He studied the scanner. The signal's source was near the royal data vault, a secure room deep inside the palace. Ethan turned to Liara. "I'm going to find the source. You stay here and hold the line." Liara shook her head. "No, we go together. It's dangerous, and you taught me to be ready." "I'm ready." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but stay close." Into the vaults. They moved quickly through a hidden passage behind the throne room, descending into the lower vaults. The deeper they went, the colder the air felt, as if the palace itself held its breath. The scanner's beeping grew louder. "Almost there," Ethan whispered. They reached a reinforced door sealed with glowing glyphs. Ethan placed his hand on the panel, overriding it with a security code the Queen had given him. The door slid open, revealing a chamber filled with ancient data crystals and new tech consoles. In the center stood a tall Zifferin in dark robes, fingers dancing over a holographic keyboard. The traitor turned, eyes glowing faintly with an implanted interface. "The age of the Queen is over," he hissed. "The machines will bring order." Ethan raised his shield. "Not today." Cliffhanger, the traitor pressed a control pad. All across the palace, drones froze for a split second, then shifted their formation, preparing a new coordinated strike. Liara whispered, "He's controlling them." Ethan stepped forward slowly. "Shut it down or I will." The traitor smiled coldly. "You're only human. You cannot stop what has begun." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly why I can stop you." He lunged, and in that instant the palace shuddered as the rogue AI prepared its final assault. The chamber inside the royal vault was cold and dim. Pale blue light from the data crystals cast long shadows across the walls. Ethan Rin held his shield steady, his body low and ready. Beside him, Princess Liara stood with her wrist shield activated, her breathing slow but firm. Across the room, the traitor in dark robes, once a trusted royal advisor named Veyran, smiled with quiet arrogance. Thin cables ran from his wrist into a glowing control console. Streams of alien code flickered across the holographic panels. You're too late, Varen hissed. The drones obey me now. The palace will fall, the queen will be forced to surrender, and the machines will rule. Ethan's voice was calm. Machines can be clever, but they don't understand courage. They don't understand choice. That's what makes humans and free people stronger. Liara added, and that's what you'll never control. Varen laughed and pressed a command pad. Up above, alarms echoed. The palace trembled. The drones began a coordinated push toward the throne room. We have to stop him now, Ethan said quietly. The fight in the vault. Ethan lunged forward, shield angled. A pulse of energy shot from Varen's console, striking Ethan's shield and bouncing off into the wall. Sparks flew. Leah,